Okay then my friends, so I think we've learned enough of the basics of Flutter now to put everything together and create our very first mini application. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to put everything together we've learned to create a very simple Flutter app, which is going to be a Ninja ID card. It's going to show like a thumbnail of a ninja, the name, details, maybe a contact button, that kind of thing. So I want you to close down your current project in Android Studio and then reboot Android Studio so we can start a new Flutter project. So click on that, then click on Flutter application and then choose a name. I'm going to call this Ninja_ID. Choose where you want to save your project. Mine's in the apps folder on my D drive. Then click next. Then we need our company domain. Again, if you don't have one of these, just make it up for now. Use yourname.com or something like that. It really doesn't matter for now. All it's doing is making a unique package name, which is not important at the minute, only when you go to deploy your apps. So let's finish this for now. And this is going to create that dummy Flutter project for us. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is open up this Ninja ID folder over here, then delete the test folder because we don't need that. We're not going to be testing this app. So let's delete that. And then inside main.dart, I'm going to delete a lot of this predefined code, which is the dummy app. So I'm going to get the class my app and scroll down right to the bottom of the page and delete all of that. Then we're left with this main function and this run app function. Let's replace this with a material app as our root widget. We've done this in the past. And then we'll have our home property. Remember, the home property determines what is going to show on the home screen of our app. So what we're going to do is create a stateless widget, and that is going to return a widget tree, which is then going to show on our home screen. So let's create that stateless widget first of all, just a simple one. So I'm going to say ST_less, which stands for stateless, and then tab to create this. And we'll give this a name. I'm going to call it Ninja Card. And ultimately, this is going to return a widget tree, which will then show on the home screen. So now we can instantiate this over here by saying Ninja Card like so. Okay, so let's just make this a little bit better. Instead of container, we'll return a scaffold like we did before. And remember, this allows us to quickly make a layout for our app, things like an app bar and the body, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to just create an app bar property first of all, which will be an app bar widget. And inside this widget, what we'll do is give this a title, and the title will be a text widget in itself, and it can say Ninja ID card. So let's leave it at that for now. That's a basic little template sorted. I'm going to save it, and then what I'm going to do is come to this device selection and choose to open up our emulator over here. So once that's opened, what I'm going to do is just press the play button to run this application over on this device. And there we go. Now we have our base layout sorted for this new Flutter app. So let's now start to customize this a little bit more. First of all, I want to address this app bar. I want to change its color, and I also don't like the drop shadow here. So let's sort a few things out. First of all, I'm going to say center title just to move the title into the center so it's not on the left, and I'll set this to true. And if I save that, we can see this zoom over. Okay, cool. Then we'll give this a different background color, and I'm going to say colors.gray. I want a gray color, but I want a deep shade of gray. So I'm going to select this, then press Ctrl Q to see all of the different shades of gray I can use. So I'm going to use 850 for this app bar, and then I'll probably use 900 as a background to the home screen in itself. So there's a bit of a difference. So over here, I'll say in square brackets 850 to give me that strength. Save that. Okay, looking good. And lastly, I want to take away this drop shadow. You might not be able to see it from there, but there is a little shadow giving it some depth. And the way we take that away is by using the elevation property and setting that to 0. And that's going to make it more flat on the screen, which is the design I want. So now that drop shadow is gone. Awesome. So now let's move on. I'm going to give this a background color over here instead of it being white. So let's go to the scaffold in itself and give this a background color property. And this will be colors.gray, and then it's going to be 900, which is a bit deeper than the app bar in itself. So let's save that. And now we have a little contrast between those two things. Okay, cool. So the next thing to do is the body property down here. So let's do that, the body. And this is going to be a column. But before we do the column, I think what I'd like to do is some padding around that column so that the contents are not up against the very edges of the screen. So let me do now a padding widget. We've seen this in the past. This just provides some space around a child widget. So inside here, we need to define this padding. So we'll say padding is going to be edge insets, and then we'll do all the way around. Or in fact, no, we won't. We'll do different values. So I'm going to say from, and then left, top, right, bottom. And we need to pass in 4 values here. So 30 for the left, I'll do. Then 40 from the top. So we have a bit more at the top. 30 on the right, and then 0 at the bottom, because we don't really need any space at the bottom. It's not going to be the full height of this screen. Okay, so that's the padding. Now we need to place our child inside this padding widget. So the child is going to be a column. So let's create that column. And this is basically going to be the layout of the whole app. We're going to have different elements stacked on top of each other inside this column. So the first thing we need inside here is a children property, which is going to be a list of widgets. Okay then, so what's the first widget I want to do? Well, eventually we're going to show an avatar at the top, a little picture of the ninja. But for now, we'll leave that because we've not covered those yet, and we'll do the rest of the content first of all. So I'm going to do a text widget first of all. And inside this text widget, I need to first of all specify what text I want to show. And this is going to be name in capitals. So it's kind of like a label, and then underneath we'll put the actual value of the name. Now we're also going to do a style property here. So this style property is going to be a text style widget. We've seen all of this in the past. So if you're not following along, maybe you should go back and watch some of the previous videos about style and text and columns and all that kind of jazz, and then come back here. So now inside the text style widget, we need to define a color for this, and the color of the text is going to be colors.gray, just the standard gray that we get with material design. And then, in fact, what we'll do is we'll just preview this for now. So I'm going to save it, and we can see name right here. So looking okay at the minute. But what I'm going to do is just give this some letter spacing so that the letters are a little further away from each other. Makes it a little bit more readable when the text is small. So I'm going to use a letter spacing property and assign that as 2 pixels. So that means 2 pixels between each letter. So if I save this now, you can see we have a bit more breathing room between each letter. Okay, so that's our first text widget inside this column right here. So what I'm going to do now is just copy that text widget and paste it below, because now I want another text widget, and that is going to be the actual value of this, the name. So let me just scoot this in, and this time we'll change the value of name to Chun-Lee. So if I save this now, it's going to look pretty much identical to this thing over here. Now we don't want that. Instead, what we want is a bigger text, maybe a yellow text as well, something like that. So what I'm going to do is change the color of this over here from gray to amber accent, and then I'm also going to give this a different strength, 200. So if I save it now, that looks like a better color to me for the value. So again, I'm going to give this a letter spacing of 2. We'll keep that. I'm going to change the font size. So we'll say font size, and for this I'm going to say 28 pixels. I'm going to save that, and that's looking better. And then finally I'm going to give this a font weight property, and for this we use the font weight object, and this is going to be bold. Okay, so if I preview now, that's looking pretty good. Now, at the minute, inside this column, these things are quite central to each other. So what I want to do is align everything to the left over here. So we've seen how to do something like that. Now, remember, when we're working with columns, the main axis is going down and the cross axis is horizontal. What we want to do is address the cross axis because we want to line everything up to the left over here. So what we have to do is come to the column over here, and we're going to say cross axis alignment. Then we say cross axis alignment, and we're going to use the start property, which means align everything to the start over here. So if I save that, now that looks better. Okay, so we have these 2 different values here, but at the minute, they're kind of bunched up together and there's no space between them. Now I suppose what we could do is apply padding around these things so that there is a bit more space, but I want to show you sometimes an easier way of adding space between two elements or two widgets like this, and that is by using the sized box widget. So what the sized box widget does is just create basically an empty box for us of a height and width that we specify. So what I could do is come after the first text widget, which is the name, and then what I could do is use the sized box widget right here and put a comment after that. Then all I have to do is specify a height property of say 10 pixels. And then what this will do is put a 10 pixel box in between these two things. Now we're not actually going to see the box. It's going to have no color. It's just going to appear as a space. So that's a nice way to add space between two different widgets. Now I'm going to do the same thing after the next text box down here, but this time I'm going to do 30 pixels of height, so a bigger space. And then I'm going to do another property and another value like this. So let me just copy what we've already created because I don't want to write it out all over again, and then paste it in here. And then I'm just going to scoot these back in so they are the correct indentation. And this time, this is going to say current Ninja level. All right, and then this is going to be, let's crank it up and go with 8. So if I save this now, we should have two lots of these things. Now we can see name is Chun-Li, current Ninja level is 8. So we have now a bit of information about the Ninja, and this is looking pretty good. Now again, after this, I want to do a little bit of space. So I'm going to do another sized box right here. So let me grab that and bring it down here. I'm just going to scoot this in as well. And after the text widget over here, I'm going to do this sized box, and that is going to give us another 30 pixels of space after this 8 before the next thing starts. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is just to create maybe a little icon, which is an email icon, and then put the email address of this Ninja next to the email icon, just a bit of contact information or something. So since we're going to have two elements next to each other, we're going to have essentially an icon and then an email address next to it. What we should do is create a row. That's what we're having, right? A row of content here, two things next to each other. So after this sized box, I'm now going to create a row like so. Let's do it not in capitals. So row. Okay, so inside this row, we first need a children property, which is going to be a list of widgets, right? So inside this list of widget, the first thing I'd like to do is an icon widget. And this icon is going to be an email icon, like a little envelope or something like that. So we'll say icons dot, and then we'll use the email icon, which looks something like this. So let's select that. And then after that, I'm going to give this a color property, and I'll say colors dot gray, and then we're going to make this of strength 400. So if I save this now, then we should see this little icon right here. Now, next to the icon inside this row, I'd like to now place some text. So let's say text, and then inside here, inside this widget, we need to specify, comma, not a full stop. What's going on? All right, inside here, we need to specify the text itself, first of all. So I'll make up some kind of email address, chun.li@thenetninja.co.uk. Okay, so that's the actual text. Now I want to style it a little bit, so we'll apply a text style widget to this. Now, before I style it, let's just have a little look, save it. Yeah, it's completely black at the minute, so we need to change the color, maybe make it a little bit bigger, and also give it some letter spacing as well. So the color, first of all, let's make this gray, just like the icon. So colors.gray, and then strength of 400. Then we'll say the font size is going to be 18 pixels. And then finally, we'll say letter spacing, and we'll just apply a 1 pixel letter spacing to this. So if I save it now, it's looking a bit better, but it doesn't look great squashed right up to this email icon. So much like I've used a sized box right here to give us a little space vertically by using this height property, what I could do is also use a sized box to give us space in the horizontal direction by using a width property instead. So what I'm going to do after the icon is use a sized box widget, and then this is going to have a width property, and we'll give this a width of 10 pixels. So save that, and that gives us a little space which looks a lot nicer. So this is kind of taking shape. We have our different properties and values here: name Chun-Li, current ninja level 8, and we now have this icon with a contact email at the bottom. Now what I'd like to do at the top is now add an image of a ninja in some kind of little circle avatar. So what I'm going to do first of all is minimize this. I have this folder over here which is all the different assets I'm going to use in the different projects that we create, and inside the Ninja ID one I've got this thumb image right here which is Chun-Li. So what I'm going to do is place this inside an assets folder over here. So let me create first of all a new directory, and I'll call this assets, and then let me drag this into that folder. Okay, so remember, before we use any kind of images, we have to declare them inside this pubspec file down here. So let me zoom down to where we use the images here and uncomment that. I'm just going to delete the extra space over here before assets. And then we only need one image, which is in an assets folder. Oops, over here. And then it's called thumb. And the extension is JPEG, like so. Okay, so if I save this and cross this off, I'm now going to click Get Dependencies because we changed the pubspec file, and now we can minimize this. Now we can use that image over here. Now we're going to place it at the top. So let's go right to the top of the column where we have our children list over here, and it's going to go at the very top of this list. Now then, what widget do we want to use to show this image? Now I said I wanted this to be some kind of circle avatar. So what I'm going to do is use a widget called CircleAvatar. That comes loaded into the Flutter framework, which is awesome. So inside this widget, we need to specify a couple of different things. First of all, the background image that we're going to use for this avatar. Now we're going to use the asset image widget to do this. So the asset image that we're going to use is going to be inside the assets folder /thumb.jpg, like so. Now, if I save this at the minute, then we're going to see this at the top over there, but it's quite small. So we want to make this bigger, and to do that we can use a radius property, and the radius of a circle is basically half of the diameter of the circle. So the bigger the radius, the bigger the circle is going to be. So I'm going to make this 40 pixels in size, and that's going to make it much bigger, this thumbnail, like this. Okay, cool. Now I would also like to put this into the middle rather than over on the left. So what I could do is click over here on the circle avatar, go to the action menu, and then center the widget. And that's going to place the center widget around the circle avatar, like we've seen in the past. So let me save this now, and now it goes into the center, which looks a bit better. Now there's one more thing I'd like to do, and that's to place some kind of divider between this avatar and the rest of the content. So after this center thing over here, I'm going to come down, and the next widget inside this row is going to be one called divider. Now this divider widget is going to take two properties. First of all, it's going to take a height property, which is going to be the space of this divider, which is going to be 60 pixels. And then secondly, a color property, which is going to be colors.gray and then strength 600, or rather we'll do it a bit darker, 800, so a little bit lighter than the background, but not much. And then we'll save this, and now we can see this little line, which is this color, between the avatar and the rest of the content. Now you might be thinking this line should be 60 pixels in height, but the line itself is not 60 pixels in height. The actual height, the space around the divider, including it, is 60 pixels in height. So we could even make this a bit more, like 90 pixels, and that's going to space it out some more as well. Okay then, so I think that is pretty much it. Like I said, this is a really simple app, but hopefully it's shown you how you can knock something up pretty quickly like this using all of the stuff we've learned so far. And the apps we're going to create in the future are going to be more complex. Don't worry about that. This is just so you can get a bit of practice using the different widgets that we've learned. Now, if you did find yourself struggling keeping up with the different things I've done here, maybe just go back and review some of the older videos before we go ahead, because from now on, I'm going to be assuming that you're comfortable with all of these different widgets that we've used inside this app. In the next video, what we're going to do is turn this into a stateful widget and look at how we can use changing data inside this app.